Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Duggan with IGN, and I'm here with Chris Wilson, showing us Path of Exile Ascendancy. We're also here with Jonathan, who is taking control of the Assassin subclass. This is one of the 19 subclasses that are being introduced in Ascendancy. For those who don't know, you play this Labyrinth, which is this series of randomly generated rooms, traps, and boss fights to unlock the Ascendancy classes, which are an extension of the skill web in Path of Exile. Did I get all that correct, Chris?
You did indeed.
Basically it. Okay. All right, well, let's jump right in to see what the Assassin subclass offers.
Great. So the Assassin is a specialization of the Shadow class. So when you take a Shadow and you complete the Labyrinth for the first time, you get 3 choices, and the Assassin is one of them. And the Assassin is the one that's all about getting in there, dealing some damage, getting out, dealing some more damage, and hopefully not getting hit in between. And so it's very much glass cannon. And there are some really interesting skills that you get here. So Jonathan's just allocated Ambush, and this means that you have a much higher chance of doing much bigger critical strikes against enemies that are on full life. So if the guy's been untouched, you're about to touch him pretty hard. And this goes really well with Assassinate. And Assassinate is a skill that increases damage you deal against enemies on low life, but it also means that you can cull the enemies. And culling is where when someone's reduced to 10% life or less, they're just instantly killed. And this means
awesome.
If you crit with one of the hits, you can potentially outright kill an entire monster due to the culling and the original effect. And as you can see, this is far more devastating than the combat previously when Jonathan encounters these groups of monsters here.
And that was what, 3 points?
Yeah, that was 4 Ascendancy points. So you get one of those first skills for completing the first Labyrinth with 2 points, and then completing the Cruel Difficulty one would complete this build here, and then give you more room to specialize further after the Merciless one.
And I'll leave it up to your brilliant community to decide which, I guess, skill gems and items go the best with these skills. And I'm sure you guys have already kind of thought that through.
Yeah,
to
and
some
the community, right, as they're watching this, they will already have outsmarted us, I'm sure. So that's the first 4 that we wanted to show. The next set here is these ones involving Unstable Infusion and Deadly Infusion. So Unstable Infusion basically says that you have a 10% chance to gain a power charge when you get a non-critical strike. Now, power charges increase your crit rate and crit damage and so on. So having it's a non-critical strikes gain power charges means you're charging up while you're failing, if you see what I mean.
Right.
And then here, the Deadly Infusion skill means that your power charges are far more effective. So now those power charges you got before are helping you crit constantly. So you're either powering up or critting, which is going to be totally insane. And so you get these situations here where your crits are just really large and do a ton of damage. Especially when combined with the previous one that we showed you, where you get a really high chance of doing crits against enemies that haven't been hurt yet. The 2 combined together is incredibly devastating.
So you told me before that you, I guess just in terms of logistics, cannot unlock the entirety of the tree, but you can unlock about a little bit more than half based upon, so you get 2 charges per Labyrinth completed on certain difficulty levels?
There are 3 difficulty levels that you can unlock the points in. So that gives you 6 for completing the 3 difficulties, which allows you roughly half the tree. It varies a little bit based on each class. And this means you do have to choose what you're specializing in, but there are a lot of tempting options there.
And I just want to point out this is one of 19 subclasses, which again is part of that larger skill web. Path of Exile, certainly, if you want to just zoom out a little bit there, Jonathan, if you have the ability to, there's a lot of choice, and it can be a little bit, just a little bit opaque to players who are starting and a little bit intimidating, but I think better that than the opposite of being shallow to the players who've been playing it for a very long time.
We want to make a game for players who enjoy depth, but thankfully classes like this give you a really clear direction. You'll be able to see the class art, you'll be able to work out what you want to go towards, and this basically tells you how to play a class. An example here is Jonathan showing the final skills we haven't shown for the Assassin yet. Toxic Delivery basically makes you the master of damage over time, which is great with poison and stuff, but also really useful for any other damage over time build in the game. Now, Noxious Strike is interesting because it's basically a mini combo system. It says that you have a chance to cause bleeding on hit on enemies, and if they're bleeding, you have a chance to poison them, and if they're poisoned, you have a chance to maim them, which is a new mechanic. Now, this means that as you're stacking up damage on enemies, they get all these various effects and progress from one stage to the other, which is cool. But it lets you also bypass some of these stages because there are existing bleeding and poison effects in the game elsewhere. So if you have a build that's getting poison on enemies, now you're just a main machine. So Jonathan's existing specialization means he's just taking out the monkeys in droves.
So a good strategy for this build, since it kind of just stacks dots on dots on dots, would be to find an enemy who has a lot of health, tag him up with dots, and then kind of kite him for a bit. So
it's good to be able, as Jonathan mentions, it's good to be able to attack quickly and stack quite a lot of hits together. And there are skills like Viper Strike, for example, that are already good at stacking on, multiple poisons on one enemy that would work really well. So we're kind of scared by the repercussions of how much cool stuff that players will be able to do using this. But the Assassin is a really cool class because it's an in-depth combat class that's all about fighting. You know, it's not about helping your teammates. It's not about having teammates. It's about getting in there and doing that much damage to a group of monkeys.
And doing 100% increased critical strike to enemies with 100% health, and then instant them. That sounds awesome to me, as well as all of the dot. And then if you can't crit strike, well, then you just build up those orbs, and then you can do that. So hopefully that was a good look at the Assassin subclass. Again, these are one of 19 subclasses coming in Path of Exile Ascendancy, along with new gems, new items, new challenge leagues, the trials, and of course Emperor Zaro himself, and the Ascendancy enchants. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Jonathan and Chris, thank you so much for showing us the Assassin subclass in Path of Exile Ascendancy.
You're welcome.